If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Lotierzo, former part-time writer, full-time observer, joined by Jack Hirsch, former president, 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. How you doing tonight, Jack?
Good, Frank. It's an anniversary date for me. This is a little self-serving, but let me get it out of the way because it's 35 years to the day, 35 years, where I became the first American journalist to cover a live professional boxing show in the Soviet Union in Moscow in Olympijski Stadium. It was actually a heavyweight title fight, technically, from the Universal Boxing Association. Marcelo Figueroa, an Argentinian, won this fight over a Russian named Opishkin, however you pronounce his name. I couldn't pronounce it then. I can't pronounce it now. But it was an experience. And at the time, the Universal Boxing Association wanted to make big inroads. They were just starting, but they kind of petered out. But you never know with these sanctioning bodies, Frank. Look, when the WBO started, I remember Doug DeWitt said when he won their title, he thought it was a big joke. And then later it became to him the greatest thing in the world, because who knows how some of these sanctioning bodies could take off, for better or worse.
What was the title that Sean O'Grady's father had to do with Monty Masters, the WBAA or WAAA?
You got it. WAA, World Athletic Association or something. And it's, listen, we see belts in the ring all the time. Listen, one of the real hardliners is a friend of ours, Russell Peltz. Russell Peltz always scoffs at these titles, like what a joke it is, how meaningless. But now that Russell's a manager, I see him posting, I'm just paraphrasing, that his guys winning intercontinental silver belt. Anything as a manager, you're forced to come on board, Frank. You're forced to recognize certain things. You'll never hear me, or you for that matter, say Daniel Dubois is a world heavyweight champion. That's an absolute joke. That's ridiculous. It's dumb to say, but there are people who describe him as such. Oh, he's a world heavyweight champion. They don't know boxing, the people who say it.
It's a joke. It's a joke. We have one heavyweight champ, Jack. Let's get to it. He fights this weekend against a kickboxer who's had one fight. We've had fights like this before. Ali had a couple gimmick fights, so we've seen it in this sport before. And at heavyweight, Usyk has been around. He's fought everybody in their backyards. I think Usyk's the best heavyweight in the world until he's defeated. I don't think I'm going on a limb saying that. I'm going to give him a pass here, Jack, but after this fight, he's got some tough decisions to make, because there's a guy out there that you just mentioned that's making some noise, and Usyk is in a no-win situation if he fights this guy, because if he beats him, he's not going to get a heck of a lot of credit. And if he loses, it's going to tarnish him a little bit in the minds of most people. Hey, Jack. Hey, Paul.
Terribly. It'll tarnish Usyk terribly. I don't follow mixed martial arts UFC the way you do, Frank. Are you familiar with his opponent at all? What is the deal with him?
No.
Why is he...
No, he's more of a. I think he's more of a kickboxer, Jack, than an MMA guy.
But he's not allowed to kick Usyk. I can understand if it was above the belt. I'm not against mixed martial arts matches, a boxer fighting mixed martial arts guy, as long as he has to kick above the belt. Can't go.
Right. Well, Jack, in the tournaments they kick. They're not allowed to kick below the belt anyhow.
No, well, he can't trip him up. He can't grab Usyk, get him in like an arm lock or something. It's kicking and punching, a certain...
That's not what this guy is, Jack. This guy's background, I believe, is a kick fighter. So, and again, as we said to the heavyweight Pronger, who we had on a couple weeks ago, I like that to a degree because those guys are used to getting hit. They're used to stuff flying at their faces. They're not going to fold in the heat of combat. So, I mean, look, I think it helps them out a little bit. I mean, those guys are tough too, but I mean, this is just strictly boxing. So he should have nothing for Usyk. He might go rounds because Usyk isn't a life taker, but Usyk's allowed to have a pass on this one. After that, he's got to make a big. He's got to make a statement.
Okay, but the sanctioning bodies, are they doing the right thing? If Usyk wins, they count it as a title defense. If he loses, they're not going to recognize his opponent as being the world heavyweight champion. They'll just strip Usyk. Now, if Usyk loses, he shouldn't be recognized as heavyweight champion after the fight. If he actually loses for real, which we can't see happening, but let's say it did happen. But should his opponent be recognized as the world heavyweight champion? He's done
no, Jack, and that's the bad part or the bad side of this is the fact that so many guys have paid their dues and are in line. You take a guy like Cabell, it's like he didn't get a shot. Here, this guy comes out of nowhere, gets a shot, and he could be the champ while Cabell is waiting. It's like, that's not right. That's what I don't like about these fights, and I don't think the title should be on the line.
But let me ask you this. How come we no longer have non-title matches the way we have it frequently years ago? It was common for non-title matches to take place. Why does the champion always have to defend the title every fight? Why can't this Usyk fight just be a non-title match, a real fight, but no title is on the line?
As it should be, Jack. The only thing I can come up with is they feel that maybe they can't sell it. And it has to be a title fight for them to sell it. And, it's a big deal. Because if it's not a title fight, then they're going to say, well, it's an exhibition.
And now there are other belts. And now with this Zuffa belt, if this Zuffa belt takes off, this is going to be a fifth major belt that they're going to look at it that way, the Zuffa belt on top of it. But, it's what it is.
But Usyk, Jack, is going to have to make a decision regarding Atalma. If Atalma beats Hrgovic, like we both predict he will, and if he looks impressive doing it, Usyk's going to, who can Usyk fight?
No, the Atalma fight would be a little while off, and I'm going to tell you why, Frank. If Atalma beats Hrgovic, his next fight, in all probability, is going to be against Daniel Dubois. Both of them are promoted by Frank Warren. This way, he grabs a title, and now they make it into a major unification.
I don't think that fight ever happens, Jack. I don't think Warren's going to put his guys in with each other and have one of them knock the other off.
Well, Dubois is probably going to fight a rematch with Fabio Wardley because Wardley had a rematch clause in the contract, which he's activating. I don't see anything Wardley will have to beat Dubois in a rematch, even though you never know. He did knock him down a couple of times. He does have a chance in a rematch. I don't want to discount his chances completely, but you'd think Dubois would repeat in a rematch. And Fury,
I would have to pick him in a rematch, even though I picked him to lose the first fight.
Right, and the Fury-Joshua winner, what would unfold? If Fury wins, he'd want to go back with Usyk, okay, without question. Fury,
and that would be an out for Usyk, Jack. That would be an out for Usyk because if he wouldn't have had a third fight with Fury, he couldn't get killed for not fighting Atalma.
No, but Frank, you're making it out like Usyk is ducking Atalma, looking for a reason not to fight him.
I'm not saying he is. I'm saying that he's going to have to address him, Jack. He's going to have to address him. Lennox Lewis, even though it wasn't planned, he fought the guy in Vitaly Klitschko who was the perceived biggest threat to him at the time when they fought. Okay, a lot of people were saying that Vitaly would be the guy after after Lewis, and they proved in that fight, and he ended up being that guy. Even and they didn't have a rematch, and that gave Lennox a little bit of a cushion because he beat him in his last fight when he was never heavier. He was losing the fight, but he won on the cut. It's like nobody could say Lennox ducked his toughest.
Well, no, I agree. It depends when you retire. I'll give you an example. Let's say Terence Crawford hadn't retired, and Boots Ennis beats Alexander Zayas decisively. And Boots has been calling out Crawford. And then Crawford suddenly retires at this time. If he was still active, then that would be considered a duck. But Crawford retired before Boots could quite take off and quite get on his heels. I think it's the same way now. If Usyk retired after this fight Saturday, no one would accuse him of ducking Otama.
I agree. But he's not going to retire though, Jack.
No, he seems to enjoy fighting. I don't get Usyk. Why is he doing this? He's not trying to enhance his legacy. I don't think his legacy is steady. He could only hurt his legacy, I think, for the most part. I think a guy like Usyk doesn't care that much about legacy. He fights because he likes fighting. He wants to do it. He's not thinking how he's going to be perceived as an all-time great. That's how we look at it, but he doesn't.
But if you look at Usyk because of who he's fought, Jack, he kind of, until Talma showed up, he kind of was in a conundrum because he clearly beat Joshua twice. He beat Fury twice. He stopped Dubois twice. It's like, other than Caballero, who else is out there that you could say, well, he's a challenge?
If Usyk said after the fight Saturday, I want Otama, I want him in my next fight, let's fight in 4 months, for example, Otama would turn the fight down.
No way.
They wouldn't take the fight.
They would take the fight in a minute, Jack.
No, there's no evidence. They haven't been calling out Usyk at all. They haven't been making any noise. They want to delay the fight as long as they can. Just let Usyk
and Jack, they probably do. But if the fight is offered to them, they cannot and they will not turn it down. They're not going to lobby for it because they don't think they can get it. But if it's offered to them, they're going to roll the dice that this guy's 40 and Talma has the power, the speed, the height, the reach to hang with him and perhaps get him.
No, what they do, they're doing things in segments. Filip Hrgović is going to be, I guess, the biggest name opponent who Otama has fought so far.
He will be. There's no doubt. He will be the best guy he's fought.
He's not bad. He's a decent fighter, but he's big. He's slow. He'll be hittable. Otama will stop him and look really good stopping him. And we're going to talk about how Otama's rising, how he's the next big star.
And he will call out Usyk after he stops Hrgović. So your argument about they haven't asked for him.
I don't think that's going to happen. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I think what's going to happen, because Frank Warren promotes them all, they're going to talk about the winner of Dubois and Wardley, the rematch goes in next with Otama. That's what's going to be called out. That's going to be the big, the next thing. And then he wins that fight, then it's on to Usyk. Then the Usyk thing is really massive, gigantic, and so on. But
I think if Talma stops Hrgović and looks good, I think they're going to yell for Usyk.
A couple of things. Just sometimes we have guests on this show, so we want to give a little update. Patty Donovan, who was a guest before, could be a guest again. He won an IBF welterweight elimination match. So he's going to be fighting for the IBF title in his next fight against the winner of the Louis Crocker-Liam Paro fight. I think it's going to be Paro, but Eddie Hearn for business would like it to be Crocker.
I saw that, and again, props to him.
And I just want to detour a little bit. You're more of a mixed martial arts guy than me, but it is kind of linked to boxing. We had on this show Paulie Malignaggi. He fought a bare knuckle fight.
And got beat up pretty bad.
Yeah, got stopped, got knocked out in 2 rounds. Paulie's what, like 44 something?
44 years old.
I hated seeing it. I mean, like, why? I mean, I understand he likes the competition. Maybe it keeps him a little in the limelight. Maybe just enjoys doing it. But I hate seeing it. I mean,
Jack, at 44 years old.
No resiliency.
No, he should, it's just, and how old was the guy he fought? I don't know. I don't follow BKC.
Some guy I don't follow bare knuckle, but some guy from the Philippines who was a champion. Paulie Malignaggi has name recognition from boxing, so he elevates the bare knuckle boxing, and he's a big proponent of it. He's a believer in it. Paulie didn't just take the fight for the limelight, to get his face in the news or for whatever reason.
No.
But he really is a big booster of bare knuckle boxing, when it first came out. We agree, Joe. I hate to use the word crazy. We understand why he does it. We just wish Paulie wouldn't do it. A lot was going on. I didn't stay up for the Ronda Rousey fight. I'm going to tell you why. Because it was close to midnight. I watched Keyshawn Davis, fight or Jahir Albright. It was a good overall show. I saw Brian Norman get back in the win column. Knock on an opponent in the second round. Keyshawn Davis, you could take his personality and put it in the garbage can as far as I'm concerned. I don't like listening to him talking, but he did look good. He's a heck of a fighter,
He's got all the tools, Jack. If he keeps his head on straight and he doesn't get in fights and he makes weight, and he said he's going to go up to welterweight shortly, so that probably will take care of that problem. But yeah, the kid's got talent. There's no doubt about it.
And he even, to his credit, after the fight, he said making weight isn't his thing. He just likes to fight. He might move up to welterweight. Good for him to say that. He admits he dreads losing that extra weight at the end. He just wants to fight. Maybe just let him fight at any weight he's comfortable in and let him go at it that way. I think more
Jack,
fighters.
You know what? That's one of the unwritten stories and least talked about stories is people just don't realize what it is and how much of a grind it is for these guys to make weight, because they fight at weights that like they just barely get in there. And we know why they do that, and they all do it. So I'm not taking shots at anybody. But you know what? That's one of the hardest parts, I think, of combat sports. It's not covered enough and focused on enough. It's about what these guys go through. And that's why you see when they retire and they don't have to worry about making weight, a lot of times they balloon up in a big way.
And you also, when we have a fatality in the ring that happens, the night of, I'm not talking about cumulative punishment. It does happen to heavyweights on a rare occasion, but notice guys who have to make weight. Heavyweights don't have to make weight. I mean, the dehydration and all.
They're more dehydrated, less fluid around their brain. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where heavyweights are supposed to be the hardest hitters, but yet the least fatalities happen in heavyweight.
Yeah, but getting back with the Ronda Rousey, it was already coming up on midnight and the fight hadn't started. And I'm sick of the late times. I figured the heck with it. As it turned out, what did the fight last? 18 seconds or something?
17 seconds. I didn't watch it live, Jack. I fell asleep. I tried to catch it. I fell asleep. I thought that Rousey was going to win. Some people think the fight was fixed. I don't think it was fixed, but I mean, you had a 44-year-old who hadn't fought since 2009 against a 39-year-old who was knocked out in their last two fights in 2016 and 17. And I saw somebody post this, Jack, and it made a lot of sense, and it was cutting. Don't tell me how big or how good a shape your sport is in when the biggest fight in one sport is a 44-year-old who hasn't fought in 16 years against a 39-year-old who hasn't fought in almost 10 years, was knocked out twice. And then in boxing, don't tell us how great a shape the sport's in when the biggest fight out there is a 49-year-old and a 47-year-old.
Well, you're referring to Mayweather and Pacquiao. Yeah, it's all entertainment now. I'm coming around, Frank. And I don't support it. Don't get me wrong. I hate what's become of the sport. But sometimes you come around and you accept something. It's like you accept a circumstance. And boxing is about a brand. You think I like the idea Ryan Garcia against Conor Benn? That fight, that's going to be considered a mega fight because of the personalities. Mayweather and Pacquiao. I mean, look, even a guy, and it wasn't a big fight, even a guy like Keith Thurman, 2 fights in 6.5 years, and he's pay-per-view. I mean, I've come around to it.
If,
It's entertainment.
if we didn't have social media, that would not be the case, Jack. But because these guys cultivate their brand on social media and do a lot of fighting on social media, and a lot of the fans see it all because they're on social media. See, back in the day, that wasn't the case. You had to get on TV, get on the radio, or you had to fight and take advantage of that moment when you had the camera on you. That's not the case today. Ryan Garcia could say something crazy tonight, and it would be everybody that follows boxing would see it tomorrow on social media, and then that would cultivate the following. And then if his opponent reiterates or retorts, same thing. And I really do think, I was thinking about this, I think social media has a lot to do with why this sport and all the sports today are in the shape that they're in.
But it's the brand. Like we had a couple of weeks ago, Christian Prenga on, who's going to be fighting Anthony Joshua. Let's say Prenga wins the fight. Let's say he wins a decision. He knocks Joshua down once, wins a decision. This is all make-believe. We have no idea what's going to happen for sure. Joshua can go on to fight Tyson Fury next, and the fight will do nearly as big a business as it would if had he not lost, if that were the case, if he did whatever. And what would be a Prenga? Maybe he'd be an opponent for Moses Otamu, play the supporting cast. They're like Raleigh Romero. He beat Ryan Garcia decisively. He won 9 of the 10 rounds. And now Garcia hasn't missed a beat. And Romero's in the back of the line still. No one is thinking to bring up to Ryan Garcia, we want to see a fight Raleigh Romero again. You shouldn't be in any big pay-per-view fight. This is a complete joke. But it's the brand, it's the entertainment. So I'm kind of used to it in a sense by now. As long as it's a decent fight, whether the guy has earned it or not, it's not as important as it was, I'd like it to be. I'm kind of coming around a little that way, as much as I hate to.
Well, you're more of a hardliner than me, Jack, because it pushes me away, and it's harder for me to get excited about some of these fights that we have. Just like as much as I like Usyk, how can you get excited about this fight? He's fighting a kickboxer who will have no chance to beat him. The only question we have is, will it go rounds, or will he just get him out early? I mean, what's the intrigue of the fight? What does it prove?
It's a privilege to watch Usyk perform. If you look at it that way, you get to see a great fighter perform under, a real setting at least. I mean, and as limited as his opponent might be in comparison, you see him perform. What could I say?
You don't think
Listen, if you Roger Clemens in his prime, if he was pitching against a junior college baseball team, you'd still enjoy watching Roger Clemens pitch and overpower them because you're watching a great pitcher perform. That's how I think of Usyk in against anyone, even though he has an overmatched opponent.
I don't quite look at it that way, Jack. I look at it as almost as it's the Globetrotters against the Generals.
You probably enjoyed the Globetrotters watching that. I mean, people enjoyed it.
I mean, but that was more entertainment. This is the heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, it should just mean more. But this guy, because everybody likes him, and you can't say anything negative about him because he's hard not to like on any level. So it's like he gets a pass. I'm just telling you, I have no interest in it. I don't even know if I'll watch it. If I'm up, I will, but it just doesn't excite me.
I subscribed to the Zone a couple of weeks ago, and I'm kind of glad I did because there were certain fights I wanted to see. I want to see Patty Donovan's fight. He's Keith Sullivan's fighter there in the IBF Eliminator, and some other good fights were coming on. And the show is good from Virginia. As much contempt as I have for Keyshawn Davis, it was a decent matchup, him and Naj Albright. Albright is a good pro. And
look what made the fight big, Jack. The first
Ryan
fight.
Norman on the undercard, he fought a guy, Josh Wagner. Wagner was awful when the bell rang. He was bad, Frank. For all his talk, he was bad. He had no punch resistance. He didn't belong in the ring with Norman. And Norman sensed it. And you got the feeling that Norman's reaction was, are you kidding me? This guy can't fight. Really, the guy ran around covered and just whatever.
Jack, since we're going potpourri, Lomachenko's coming out of retirement. What's it been, 3 years?
Josh Wagner, by the way, he was just outclassed. I didn't mean to be demean.
Right.
Him as
in this sport that happens. But what do you think of Lomachenko coming back, Jack? Because I've seen guys say, well, he wanted his contract to end with Arum. He wants to fight Tank Davis. I'm not sure what I think of it. All I can say is this. I would have lost money. I would have bet that Lomachenko would have stayed retired. I'm a little surprised at this.
Lomachenko's skills were slipping about 6 years ago. They were slipping that far back. He was still a heck of a fighter. I did think Teofimo Lopez was going to beat him when he did. I had predicted that, beforehand. You could go to YouTube and see me get interviewed, and find that. And then his skills have slipped further. He's still a very good fighter. He fought Devin Haney basically to a standstill. I thought it was a fight that should have been called a draw. Haney got a split decision. Fine. But he's not the same Lomachenko at the very top of his game. The same Lomachenko at his absolute peak would have been a threat to beat Shakur Stevenson, for example. He couldn't beat
I would have
Shakur
liked to have
Stevenson.
seen that.
Yeah, that's a fight that could have gone either way. Nothing would have surprised me. Maybe Stevenson outpoints him. Maybe Lomachenko is all over Stevenson and is too hot for Stevenson to handle. But the Lomachenko and now, he doesn't beat Stevenson. Stevenson beats him big. But Tank Davis, a guy who I know you have been, and with justification in the past, extremely, extremely high on, is one of your favorites.
I thought Tank could fight.
But Tank, how good could Tank be now? He could do no better than a draw with Lamont Roach. Roach is a good fighter, but he's not an exceptional talent.
And there's an example, Jack, that if Lomachenko and Tank were made, that'd be a huge fight. It's years after the sell-by date, but it would be a huge fight.
Who knows what Tank has?
And that's the other part that would make it huge. At one time, I liked Tank. I don't know who I'd like now. I'd like to see what Lomachenko looks like. And I saw what Joe said. He's going to fight. They're looking at him fighting Navarrete. Okay, well, let's see how he looks there. But you know what? Tank's been on the shelf and hasn't looked good for a while.
Navarrete. This version of Loma doesn't beat Navarrete. Because I'm going to tell you why. Navarrete punches. He's extremely busy. And that's been Lomachenko's strength, his activity during a fight. He gives you these crazy angles, Lomachenko, but he's always busy. And Navarrete doesn't pose. He's not going to go for the feints.
And he'll keep Lomachenko. He'll bring it to Lomachenko and have him, I hate to say this term, on the back foot, but if he has him going back, he's going to have Lomachenko right where he wants him.
But Navarrete, he can punch hard, but he's not a devastating puncher. So I don't think Lomachenko gets hurt in the fight. It goes the distance, and maybe Lomachenko wins a close decision. It'll be a very competitive fight, if he fought Navarrete. But you talk about Tank and Lomachenko, and obviously that would be the fight that would do really big.
That would be big.
Okay, now if I had to ask you, who do you trust more who's in training right now?
Lomachenko.
Lomachenko, without a doubt. We don't even know his Tank training. And Tank has some problems with the law, but I have a feeling that's not going to block the fight for the simple reason. If Tank was going to go to jail, he would have gone by now. I think because there's been a lull, right. Something will get worked out or is being worked out behind the scenes some way, somehow. I'm just speculating. But you better believe Lomachenko's in hard training right now without a fight coming up. Right.
Absolutely.
Now.
And I'm sure he didn't let himself get out of shape while he wasn't fighting.
Yeah, and Tank, I wouldn't be shocked if Tank didn't train for a couple of days. that, something like that drove me crazy when people would talk about Muhammad Ali. Well, he had to lay off. He didn't train. He didn't do this, didn't do that. Why didn't he train? No one forced him from not training. I mean, it's on him. He could have.
But Jack, I told you this before. He didn't believe he was going to fight again. He thought the racist government was not going to let him ever box again. And at that time, it did seem. I mean, we were alive then. We followed. I never thought he was going to fight again.
Yeah, I know. I hear you, Frank. But he kept trying to pursue getting a license. And Ali always used the cop out. As long as I have 6 weeks to train. That was his mindset. He could be completely out of shape, but give me a hard 6 weeks of training and I'll be ready. And that was a wrong mindset. 6 weeks. You mean to tell me you could not do anything for 6 months and then you train hard for 6 weeks and you're fine? That was his mindset, but that's on him.
But during the 60s, though, during his championship years, 64 to 67, he was always in shape then. I mean, he was only 22, between 22 and 25, but he always was in shape then. He didn't have issues with being in shape until he came back. And it was after the first Frazier fight that he wasn't always in great shape. And then for that run in 73, after Norton won and through Foreman, that's when he was in the best shape of his career during the comeback. Because he had something to prove and he had dragons to slay in Norton, Frazier, and Foreman.
Yeah, he trained his hardest, according to Gene Kilroy, for the second Frazier fight. Like he was in camp there for 12 weeks. He really, really trained hard for that one, according to Gene Kilroy.
Well, Jack, he never got out of shape because he got in great shape for the Norton rematch. 6 or 8 weeks later, he fought Rudy Lubers in Jakarta. And he carried that fight 12 rounds. And then 3 months later, he was in with Frazier again. So that was his run during this. That's when the second part of the legend was formulated during, Norton 2 through, I guess, Frazier 3. Because after Frazier 3, he was never in really good shape.
After the third, I mean, he trained. Yeah, it depends. He trained hard for the third fight with Norton, but when you're inactive between fights, it's hard. That's where fighters lose it. I mean, had Joe Frazier, even after the first Ali fight, gone back into training, let's say 6 weeks later, he was all exhausted right after the fight. And that lived the life of a fighter, he would have been much better off. But that's with all these guys.
Howard Cosell, Jack, said it after the first Ali Frazier fight. He said, "I don't know if we'll ever see Frazier again." He goes, "He conquered the mountain, and now I think he's retired mentally as a fighter." And you kind of could see that the way he was touring with the band, he was doing all the talk shows. It's like, I think he put boxing out of his mind for a while, and he even talked about it at the time. If you remember, he said, that might have been the last time you saw me, but then he couldn't turn down the money. He couldn't walk away.
Conquering the mountain, you wanted to mention a special birthday.
Today is May 18th. Sugar Ray Leonard's birthday, I believe, was yesterday, Saturday, no, the 17th. He was born May 17th of 1956. He just turned 70 years old. Jack, can you believe that? I remember watching on TV back in 92 when ABC did the 50th birthday celebration of Ali, and I thought, Ali cannot be 50. And here we are in 2026, 50 years after, almost to the day, 50 years after the Olympics, Sugar Ray Leonard is 70 years old.
Yeah, well, the 50th anniversary of the Olympics is coming up.
Coming up in July.
I mean, we're more fond, I think, of the fighters of our youth. And I don't like to get carried away about the guys in the past saying, oh, they're so much better than today, for example. And you're like me in that sense. As high as we're on Sugar Ray Leonard, we're not sure he would have beaten Terrence Crawford. We have our doubts.
But Jack, if you think about it, though, Crawford's the only guy, I'll say that, regarding Leonard in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other welterweight that's come along who I'd say, you know what? I'm not sure who I'd pick. I have to really think about that. There's nobody else. Leonard was a legitimate and is a legitimate all-time great. And I think to this day, I still have him number 2 at welterweight. So
Yeah,
I know you're saying
Leonard,
about the guys of our youth, but he was the real deal. He was the real deal.
but during the time when Leonard fought, we would hear people talk about the guys from decades before. That's the point. I don't want to be like one of these old timers. Oh, the guys in the past were much better. Like I remember Jose Torres talking about Roy Jones. How would Roy Jones have done when you fought? They asked Jose, and Jose said he would have fit in. And I got so annoyed hearing that. Roy Jones would have fit in with with the guys when you fought, and I felt like saying, Jose, you can line up all the top guys during the time you fought, and Roy will get rid of them one by one, and you can get online with them. He'll accommodate you as well. That was my feeling at the time.
But Jack,
yeah,
Roy Jones is another one though, who is a generational, once every 2 generations guys that come along. I mean, we're talking about Leonard and Jones. How many of them have there been?
No, very few. There's certain generational fighters, and that's why I said I missed the boat on Devin Haney. I described him as a future generational fighter, and the generational fighters we talk about is a Sugar Ray Leonard, a Roy Jones, a Floyd Mayweather too. Let's call him
Crawford.
A generational fighter. Crawford, yeah. I mean, guys who've had phenomenal careers. Pacquiao, even though he wouldn't beat those guys because of his body of work, something about
Pacquiao's a generational fighter, yes.
Generational, but it's so hard to get into that territory. I guess Whitaker was brilliant. I guess you could put Whitaker in there because he was so brilliant, Duran, obviously, everyone describes, the Haglers, Durans. Hearns, in a way, doesn't get the recognition that he should, in a sense. But
I totally agree, and he should get it.
Yeah, but
I mean, he knocked out guys from welterweight to cruiserweight, and
even the guys today, who are the generational talents out there? You could predict Boots Ennis is going to be it. You can make the prediction, but the jury is out. The jury's
right. Boots has work to do, but what we've seen looks like the potential's there.
Yeah, Otama, the potential is there, but I have reservations because I hear the rumors Otama doesn't enjoy fighting. And keep this in mind, Frank. When Anthony Joshua was unbeaten and riding high, people were thinking he was a generational talent, could be an all-time great heavyweight. And look at the way
I thought he could have been a poor man's Lennox Lewis, Jack, so I missed that.
Yeah. And Tyson Fury, people were ready to put him as a top 10 all-time heavyweight. And then he loses twice to Usyk, and maybe he is a top all-time 10 heavyweight who just lost to a guy who was a little better than him. I don't know, but
I don't know if his body of work gets him there, Jack. He would be a pain because of his size, and he can move and he can box, but his body of work isn't really all that great. I mean, who's his big win? An old Klitschko and Wilder.
But I described Devin Haney. I said he was going to be as a generational talent. He's not, and he's not going to be one. Devin Haney might fight well the next few years. But when I say generational talent, Devin Haney's never going to be close to being on the level, with the Sugar Ray Leonard and Terrence Crawford. You got to be close to that level. That's what I mean by generational talent. What's odd? Who's not a generational talent? But he is and he isn't. Canelo Alvarez. The body of work says he's a generational talent, the body of work. But the naked eye test, he's below the Whitakers, the Leonards, the Crawfords. But is he a generational talent, Canelo? He's had a generational career, but is he a generational talent?
No, he's a legendary fighter because of his resume and how long he's been around. But then again, we go back to his record, Jack. What are his signature wins? Beating Golovkin the second time? That his best win?
And Golovkin comes a little short of being a generational talent. A little short, as great as he was. I mean, but if
He didn't have the opposition either. It's a shame,
well,
and Golovkin got cheated, Jack, in that first fight with Canelo. If that's a win on his record, his career looks a lot different.
Well, look at who had one of the best heavyweight careers ever, Vladimir Klitschko. No one says he's a generational talent because he didn't quite have the opposition. Speaking of Canelo, he's fighting in September Christian Mabili. Mabili's a threat to beat him.
I think so too. I think I could see Crawford having. I mean, I could see Canelo getting beat now.
You know what that fight reminds me of a little bit? Chavez and Frankie Randall, where Chavez was coming off the Whitaker draw, and they were, people were thinking he's.
That's a good observation.
Yeah,
I can see that.
So I don't think Canelo is safe in this fight, at all. And is Canelo the draw still that he was before the Crawford fight? Can he resume being the big draw? In other words,
I don't think he's the draw that he was, Jack, but I think he's still a draw, and we're hard pressed to say who's a bigger draw right now.
Well, between who and who?
Who's a bigger draw in boxing than Canelo? I mean, Benavidez might be, but he's not there yet.
Well, when you talk about Benavidez, no, Benavidez, I'd say the answer is no, for the simple reason. Canelo can still fight anyone, and there's going to be a degree of interest.
And that's what makes him a draw.
Benavidez can't quite do that. We want to see Benavidez could be as big a draw if he had the right dance partner. Put him in against Bivol. And that's the whole boxing world stop. The whole boxing world stops, and everyone gets excited to no end. You talk about the best fights that could be made in boxing. That definitely is on the short list. Benavidez, Bivol. Is there better fights that could be made? Think of it, right? If Bivol is fighting in a couple of weeks, by the way, he's fighting in Russia against some no-name opponent, basically. I don't remember the name of his opponent. But
I just looked at it before we came on, and I already forget.
Right. If Bivol looks really good and hasn't missed a beat, what a fight that is, him and Benavidez, because
it has to be a 175, though.
Yeah. Now the question's this: I don't want Benavidez to make weight, weaken himself, make weight. And then if he loses, I don't want to accept an excuse. Don't go down to light heavyweight if making weight could affect you, to the point where you won't be able to perform as well.
So in other words, tell us that before the fight.
Exactly.
You can make 175, and that's final. And don't tell us afterwards that, well, you know what? I thought I could, but it really took a lot out of me. If you can't make 175, then don't fight him.
Or say that right before the fight. I made weight. It killed me to make weight, guys. It weakened me, but I still expect to win this fight or whatever. But he knows his own body. He had trouble making weight in the past at a lighter weight division.
And now he's going all the way up to 200 pounds. Now he's got to come down 25 pounds. I will always bet against the guy, Jack. I was telling a friend of mine this the other night. I will always bet against the guy that went up and comes back down. We saw Emil Griffith do it against Napoli's after he fought Benvenuti 3 times. We saw Leonard come down again for Terry Norris. If Terrence Crawford came out of retirement and fought below 160 against one of the elite guys, I'd probably pick against him.
It's funny you mentioned Griffith against Napoli. Griffith was fighting as a middleweight, and he tried to get back his old welterweight title. He moved down 2 weight divisions to make weight. It's insane today. Not only that, he weighed something like 144 and a half. Look it up. It's crazy. He not only
I forgot about that. You're right. When he fought Napoli's.
And Griffith said he was strong. Napoli's was just better. He fought Napoles when Napoles was at its absolute zenith, at its peak. And it was a competitive
1969.
fight. Yeah, Napoles did beat him like 11 rounds to 4.
He out hustled him. There's no doubt. I watched the fight. I don't think he beats him prime for prime, but I think he beat him that night. But that wasn't the best Griffith.
But that was the best version of Napoles at that time. Yeah.
But you see, when they're ranked, they're always ranked close. The guy to me that gets a little bit screwed in the rankings, but I know why, and that's because he only held the title for what, 60 days or 90 days. It's Louis Rodriguez.
Yeah, Rodriguez.
Think of all the guys he beat, Jack. He beat the same guys that Griffith did. And in some cases, he beat them more convincingly. And even though he's 1-3 against Griffith, he should be 2-2. But he always is lower down. But you give me the best Rodriguez. He's 50-50. We know he's 50-50 with Griffith. He's 50-50 with Napoles. He's probably 50-50 with Gavilan. Rodriguez was a great fighter.
What about Floyd? Is he 50-50 with Money Mayweather?
No, I'd favor him over Floyd.
You would favor him over Floyd?
Jack, look at his. I don't have to tell you. Look at his record. What's Floyd Mayweather bringing in there that Rodriguez is going to be awed by after all the guys he fought several times? I mean, just the 4 fights with Griffith alone.
Yeah, but Rodriguez was great. But the circumstances, the 4 fights with Griffith, the 1 fight he won, they were all championship fights. The decision was unanimous. The 3 fights he lost were by split decision. They were never unanimous.
And I forget if it was the second or third fight they booed really bad.
But what's interesting is this. I haven't to this day seen every single fight, let alone to get to score it. I think I saw one of them that I scored like a draw. But Angelo Dundee, who trained and managed Rodriguez, he never seemed to make an excuse by saying he thought his guy won or this or that. He said in regard to Griffith, he said, well, some guys have the other guy's number. That, I guess, was the case, with Griffith and Rodriguez. Maybe Dundee just meant that Griffith was the one guy who could fight Rodriguez to a standstill. I don't know. But Dundee was never of the opinion, it seemed, that his guy was robbed in any of the 3 losses.
I tried to get him. I interviewed him in, I think, 2000 when I did the radio show on ESPN Radio 1490 out of Atlantic City. And I tried to get him to pinpoint who was the best between Rodriguez, Basilio, and Leonard. And he wouldn't commit. You
mean Griffin? Who?
Dundee? Dundee. I tried to get
Dundee. Oh, right.
Of the 3 guys he worked with a lot, who were the best of those 3? And I tried every way to get him to commit, Jack, and he never got off the fence. And I can't blame him. He doesn't want to put anybody down. I mean, he had great success with all 3, but it's like, I would have liked to know what he thought.
It's funny with these trainers when they're in a conflicted position. A guy who I didn't know, but you knew him well, Georgie Benton, the great middleweight / trainer. You spent time with him in the gym, in Joe Frazier's gym. I saw him in Canastota once and just very quickly talked to him on boxing. And he had trained he was Joe Frazier's assistant trainer under Eddie Futch, as you know. And he
in Manila, he was in the corner.
He worked with Evander Holyfield as well, And I said to him, come on, we both know at their very best, Joe Frazier would have beaten Evander Holyfield head to head. And you could tell he wanted to tell me he agreed with me, but he couldn't bring himself to saying it.
But so he didn't commit?
No, he didn't quite commit, but I could tell by his reaction. Yeah, that's what he wanted to basically say. What's funny too, where guys have an opinion. I don't think I ever told you this story. It didn't involve me. I'm watching Howard Cosell. He did the sports when I was a kid, and he had on Yank Durham before the fight of the century against Ali. This was, I think, after Frazier had beaten Jimmy Ellis, like right after that. And they're just talking, and Cosell asked Durham, how do you think Joe Frazier's ultimately going to be rated as far as the all-time great heavyweights? And Durham says, I think ultimately Joe's going to be rated as the second greatest heavyweight of all time behind Joe Louis. And Cosell looks surprised, says, Joe Louis, why don't you put him ahead? And Durham says, well, I think Louis was just so great, this and that. I kind of love that he had one guy. Same thing with Gil Clancy. He always said to me one time, Griffith is the second best welterweight I ever saw behind Sugar Ray Robinson.
I remember, I forget what it was. It was a Russell Peltz get together. I don't know if it was watching films or what. It was in one of the corner bars in Philly, and Milt Bailey was there. And Milt Bailey was in Frazier's corner for the fight of the century, and other fights, a lot of other, all Frazier's fights basically. And he was also in the corner with Sonny Liston when he was making his run and was the champ. And I asked him, I said, Milt, I said, let me ask you this. I said, who do you think would have won on their best night, Sonny or Joe? He says, really? I said, yeah, who do you think would have won? And he looked around and he said, Joe's not here, is he? I said, no, he's not here. He goes, I'd have to say Sonny. And it's like, that was one of the few times I got a guy who got off the fence a little bit.
Milt Bailey, he was associated with Liston. He wasn't associated at all with Frazier, was he?
He was one of his cornermen.
He was one of Joe's cornermen, Milt Bailey?
Joe Frazier, yes, with Durham and with Futch.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I didn't realize. Wow. Then there's something to it, when the
because he was with both guys in their prime. He was in the corner when Joe was on top and when Sonny was killing everybody. And he looked around. He goes, "Joe's not here, is he?" I said, "No, he's not." He goes, "I'd have to say Sonny." But these guys don't like. They don't. It's hard to make picks and go against their guys. I remember asking Willie. I remember Willie Reddish telling myself and Curtis Parker after we got done sparring one day about how Sonny had said that Clay, because they always called him Clay, was a better puncher than anybody thought. He said Sonny said that about him. He said Cash Clay was a harder puncher than people thought. That's not the guy he fought isn't the guy who he thought he was going to fight.
What's interesting about Sonny Liston? I've been seeing it more and more popping up in social media, and it's not A1, AI, I mean, make-believe stuff. It's photos of Sonny Liston smiling in certain situations. I saw about a week ago a picture of him between Ernie, Terrell, and Ali.
That's a real picture, Jack. What? That's not AI. That's a real picture.
That's a real picture. That's what I mean. And I've seen other pictures of Sonny smiling. And the image of Sonny is he's always, in a bad mood. You can't get him to smile. You sing a part of Sonny Liston. When he smiles, I don't like it. I'm going to tell you why, because he looks less intimidating. We want to think of the Liston with a scowl, a mean look all the time. You see Jerry Quarry at ringside. Sonny's at ringside in Los Angeles. I think Quarry's walking by and they kind of shake hands and Sonny is smiling actually, rather than giving him like that stare, like looking at him.
Well, there was talk of those two fighting back then.
Yeah, I always wonder what would have been of Liston had he been allowed to go in with the top guys. Had he been allowed in the WBA heavyweight tournament, might he have actually won it? Because I'm going to tell you, my guy Jimmy Ellis, that was a bad style matchup for him, even against the no Liston. That was a bad matchup at that time because Liston, this is before he got stopped by Lee Ellis Martin in 1969.
No, this is the Liston that fought Henry Clark.
Right. That Liston may have been a nightmare for Ellis. That long jab. Let's say he takes Ellis's punches. Can Ellis really outbox him over 12 rounds?
I mean, Jack, in 68, he might have had a shot to do it. He might have had a shot to it because he had a good jab. He had some sting on his right hand. I mean, I would have picked Liston, but you know what? Ellis is always underrated, but I would have picked Liston. So you're saying, how does he do in that tournament? I mean,
No, he beat
The only,
Floyd
the only
Patterson,
guy I think I could see beating him is the guy that won. Or no, the only guy I could see
Bonavina
beating
beat
him. No,
Maybe
no.
Jerry Quarry with the quick hands, counter punching, moving a bit.
But Jack, Jerry
Quarry-
Quarry's biggest vulnerability was a jab. Liston would have beat him with his jab alone. The only guy if Liston was in that
Milton Berger.
tournament, that's actually a great hypothetical. If Liston was in that tournament,
He
I mean,
won it.
Ernie
Leotis
Terrell's not
Martin-
beating him. Thad
No,
Spencer's
Terrell,
not beating
that
him.
version of Terrell, no.
But Leotis Martin was in that tournament.
Leotis Martin. But I'm going to tell you something. Liston got the better Leotis Martin, but he got tired a couple of years
Yes.
later. Ran out of gas. Liston
And that
would
was
have been
August of
better, safer,
67.
younger. He beats that.
Yeah, that's
version of
2.5
Leotis
years before
Martin.
they fought. Liston probably beats Leotis Martin. He beats Thad Spencer. He beats
Oscar
Mildenberger. Beats
Bonavina.
Bonavina. Might not stop him, Jack, but he boxes his rear end off. And
Wow.
that jab, yeah. Liston may have won that tournament.
So let's say Liston
And
wins
just think,
that
Patterson was
tournament.
in that tournament too. We would have had Liston Patterson 3.
Patterson would have been happy to make it out of the first round, and he made no bones about it. He said he always wanted to fight Liston a third time to make it out of the first round. That would have been like a moral victory. So if Liston won that tournament, let's say he was allowed in, what would have been next? You know who may have beaten Liston, believe it or not? This is going to sound insane to you, Frank. Buster Mathis coming out of the tournament by that time. The Buster who lost to Frazier could have, I think, outboxed an old Sonny Liston, perhaps.
But Buster wasn't in a tournament.
No, but the tournament would have been done, and Liston would have won it, and let's say he has to continue fighting.
You know what happened? If Liston won the tournament, Yank Durham would have had to done something he didn't want to do, and it would have been Joe would have had to fight him.
No. At that time, after the tournament, it ended in April of 68.
68.
By that time, Frazier would have been developed enough. He would have beaten Liston,
That's right. And Frazier in 68, Frazier beat Mathis, Ramos, and Bonavina. Yes, he would have beat Liston.
Yeah, if you want to talk about a younger Liston, that's another discussion. But I can't say I'm as confident of that happening. A younger version of Liston, but
Sonny Liston, Jack, when I was a little kid, always fascinated me. I always was fascinated by him when I would see the Ring magazine, even to this day. Whenever I come up across an old magazine and there's an article about Liston, I always read it once or twice. And it's like I was always fascinated by the guy, but obviously he died
when Foreman was alive. We only have a couple of minutes, so I would have loved to have sat down with him in private and had a serious discussion. Do you really think at your best you would have beaten Liston? Because he sparred with him a lot, the older version of Liston. And I kind of wonder George's mindset, him thinking if Liston were young at his best, could I have beaten him? That would have
been just never get a straight answer with George, Jack. That's the problem.
I would have given an edge to the Foreman in Kingston, Jamaica to beat the best version of Liston. I would have given Foreman a little edge there.
I would have picked Foreman.
Yeah, tall, a little more rangier, but I have doubts. Whether, with Liston's jab. I mean, he's going to out-jab Foreman. Liston's jab is going to find the target. You may have gotten another Lyle Foreman slugfest or something. I don't know.
I think it looks more like Cleveland Williams and Liston, but I think George would get Sonny. I think he had a better chin, a bigger punch, and physically stronger. Liston was clearly the better technician. I just don't think that boxing would have been the deciding factor there.
Okay, Frank. Okay, good stuff, Frank. I don't have to ask you whether you're picking Usyk or not. I'm not going to insult you by asking that.
Does he win by stoppage? He has to stop him.
I would think so.
So what's the over under 6 rounds?
I have no idea. I'll watch the fight, but
if it goes over 6 rounds, I'm going to have a lot of fun teasing Lyman Pauly.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll see. So see you next
And
week.
he'll see this, so I hope you hear me, Lyman. You better end within 6.
See you
All right,
next
everybody.
week.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.